Guys, I'm Will,
I'm Kim.
and we run Wild Bill Wellness. I'm Wild Bill, and we deal with everything wellness.
Today we will be covering a topic, a little bit of grief and loss, but more so about life moving forward as a widow. So today we have Teri on the call. Thanks, Teri, for joining us. So if anything we talk about today triggers you, please scroll down on our page and look up the helplines, and we encourage you to seek professional help.
Brief introduction. Teri is joining us today. Teri is married to one of my best friends that I grew up with. Sadly, going on 7 years, he passed away. And so we just wanted to have a chat with Teri, just kind of how she's moving forward and having hope and being there for her kids. Yeah, she's got 4 kids as well.
Yeah. So maybe, Teri, you want to give us just like an introduction, who you are, where you come from, things like that.
Okay. My name is Teri Wulf. My friends and family call me Teri. I'm of Samoan background. I was married to, or am married to, I'm married to Daniel Tuitupo, who is Tongan Yuan, and we have 4 children together. So the ages range from 11, she just turned 12, down to 6. He's about to turn 7. So that's the age range.
You're a twin as well, eh, Teri?
Yeah. So I'm a twin. I grew up being the eldest of 6 children.
Yeah.
In Auckland, New Zealand.
You guys live did you guys live in South Auckland?
So I grew up on the North Shore, and when I was about 18, we moved to South Auckland to Clendon, yeah.
Clendon City.
So I thought maybe we could kick off by you telling us how that came about. Did you move to South Auckland for Danny, and how did you meet him? Tell us a little bit about Danny so we get to know him a little bit.
Okay, so I had met Danny before we moved to South Auckland, but that wasn't why we moved to South Auckland. It was actually getting more and more expensive to live on the North Shore. And so my mum had just had, the 6th child. And so it was getting more and more expensive, and we needed to move out of the North Shore. But, because of the way that I am, I was like, yeah, let me help you find a house. And I found one in South Auckland.
How convenient.
Like that. It was pretty funny because my twin sister and I, we were invited by one of our cousins to go to this church event, and we were invited like ahead of time, like a long time ahead of time. Her boyfriend lived on the North Shore. We were on the North Shore, and so she was like, he'll pick you up on the way to the event or whatever. And so we went there. Actually, both my sister and I were like, nah, I don't want to go. Like, nah, it's not really, like, let's just chill at home. Who cares? But on the day of, I was like, you know what? Who cares? Like, let's just go have fun and just, like, live life. Like, not really expecting fun, have fun. Anyway, I got there, and Danny was one of the first to greet us. And so he came, he's like, hi, my name's Danny. And, well, okay, cool, hi. And so we headed into it was a church activity. So it was in the chapel. And then my sister and I were sitting in the foyer waiting, because it was not a blind date. No, it was a blind date. There was 4 people were set up. It was 4 people at a table, and 2 females, 2 males at a table were sitting there, and everyone had dinner and just talked and stuff. There was a luau outside, stuff like that. And so my sister and I were sitting in the foyer waiting to go in, and he kind of came back up to me. He's like, hi, I'm Daniel. I'm like, yeah, we met you outside. And he's like, oh yeah, well, yeah, that's me. I'm like, okay, cool. Anyway, they paired everyone up, and because we didn't really know anyone, they kind of paired everyone up as, age groups, so all the 18, 19-year-olds together at certain tables and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, my sister went in, and they were like, okay, so how old are you? She's like, 18. And so they're like, okay, you're at table T or something like that. And so she's like, okay, cool, I'm going in. And then it came to me and she's like, so how old are you? I'm like 18. She's like, okay, you're at table S. And then like, you just see like Danny like nudging the chick's husband, like, nah, not, nah. And he's like, oh, nah, like the other table. She's like, oh, table G, table G.
With the old fellas.
Yes. So he got me to sit at the same table as him. So we were at the same table, and he was 23. So he's like 5 and a bit years older than me, but he acted like a 16-year-old, so we're fine. But like, long story short, going through the night and everything, like at the end of the night, because it was like, so it was me, this Aussie chick Taryn, and then like Danny and another dude, right? And so at the end of the night, I actually thought he was into the other chick. So like, I was like, oh yeah, like whatever. Like I wasn't looking for anyone, but I was like, oh, he's digging this chick. And so he was like, oh, can I have your number? And I was like, oh, actually, I literally just bought a new phone the week before, because my phone had like been broken and I hadn't had a phone for over a year, like a mobile. So I was like, oh, let me just get my number from my sister. And he's like, hey, make sure you give me the real number, not a fake one. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, cool, yeah, sweet. Danny is very, if you looked at him, he looked very intimidating, right? Like so many people get intimidated by him because of the way that he looks. He's just, I wouldn't say rough looking, but he just, like, I have an intimidating look, right? Like a lot of people say that I have a resting bitch face. So it's just like,
no.
Yeah, so then like he's super intimidating, but they're soft and shy, you know what I mean? So like he was into me, but then he came to my workplace, because I lived on the North Shore, but I worked in Penrose, and he came and brought me lunch or picked me up for lunch for 3 weeks straight. Wow. And so he would just come to work and be like, hey, do you want lunch? Okay, cool. So we'd go to like Wendy's, which was just up the road from my work, and we'd, have lunch every day. Anyway, it took him 3 weeks to even ask me to go out with him. So he was like this big intimidating dude, but then he was so not insecure. I don't know what the word is, not insecure, but he was very, just shy. And you know what I mean? Like he was confident, but there were things that he was not confident on. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't that outgoing to think like, oh yeah, I'm the man. You know what I mean? Like, and be like, oh yeah, I know you want to be with me. So it was very interesting to see that side of him. And I didn't think he was into me, but then he came and he took me out every day, and then was like, okay. And then even the way that he asked me to be his girlfriend was very funny too. Like, I don't know if you want to hear that story. Maybe we'll just say it front.
You've told us a little bit about how he approached you, because I remember the backstory of that, like, because I'm one of his good friends, and so he told me, he was like, bro, because he was actually one of the organizers for that event, and he was telling us like, bro, I had set these chicks came from the North Shore, bro, and I set it up. I said, I'm gonna try and date this one. She's pretty hot. And then I was like, all right. I said, is this your eternal companion or what? And we just joked around, but obviously it ended up being that way. But tell us some unique things that are unique traits of Danny.
So that was like one of the ones, that was about him. So he's super intimidating, but he has this smile about him that just like changes that thought of him. Like you can look at him and be like, man, this guy's intimidating. Then he has a smile that's super friendly, and he's like one of those guys, like I'd never ever heard anyone speak any ill about him at all. Like he was one of those dudes that just he was just so caring about people and very mindful about how he goes about like just living and everything, and how he's mindful about other people, and just super genuine. He was super funny. Like, he's super funny and just very confident in the way that, like, you couldn't really embarrass him. You know, like, he just had this confidence about him that, like, he would just brush off anything that anyone did that, you know, most people would find embarrassing, but he would literally, like, carry it on like it was nothing, you know? So,
He's
like,
pretty
he just,
witty. I
yeah,
remember he was pretty witty, and he was like the class clown, you know. And
yeah,
he, you know, when you go to church dances and no one's dancing, he'll go up in the middle and dance by himself. And just, we used to call him like Mr. Spotlight because he always steals the spotlight, you know.
yeah.
But to me, Danny was about 4 years older than me, and he was kind of like a mentor for me and some of our friends, because he was a bit older than us. So he was always telling us like what's good and what's not good to do and little things. So I always appreciated that from Danny, and so yeah, we're still here.
So
Yeah,
now you have a life without him, and that's, as we mentioned a bit earlier, that's going 7 years now, just this past August. So what was, if you can go back there 7 years, what was that like? Yeah.
It was very interesting because so he had nocturnal epilepsy, right? So he had epilepsy which was really only in his sleep. So he was still able to work, he was still able to drive, and he would only really have seizures if he was like overly fatigued, like overstressed, or if he didn't take his medication. And so 2 years before he passed away, he actually like had really really strong chest pains, and like really bad chest pains, and we went into hospital, and they had like a cardiologist like look him over and everything, because he had like a really irregular heartbeat. And so they looked him over, and they kind of just they just said to him, well, it's just an inflamed heart, here's some inflammation medication, and go on home. We didn't really have any like follow-up appointments or anything like that. But that was like a big thing for us. That was in 2010. 2010. And so 2 years later, we had 2 children at that time. 2 years later, I had 3 children, and I was pregnant with the 4th. And so at that time, so our marriage was going like really well. We had gotten to the point where, you know, like you go through a lot of humps and everything, you know, like trying to get to know each other better and to work well together. And I felt like at that time it was like the best time like in our marriage, you know what I mean? Like we had gotten to a point where we just both understood each other. You know, I know that there was a lot of growth that we still could have had, but like I do believe that that was one of those points, you know, in time that we were just there with each other, and we worked well. And so we were at his cousin's house, and he actually had a seizure that morning, and it was actually my son's first birthday. And so my son Lachlan, who is, he's 8, he just turned 8. That was his first birthday, and Danny had a seizure that morning. And I remember talking to him. I was like, what's going on? Like, why are you having a seizure? Because we got him to the point where he was only having a seizure like a few times a year. Like, it wasn't really many times at all. It wasn't too often. And so I just said to him, man, like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I don't know. And I'm like, did you take your medication? Like, he's like, oh, no, I haven't been taking it. I was like, what the hell is wrong with you? I'm like, when's the last time you took it? And he's like, oh, like a week ago. And I was like, wait, what? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. But, you know, like, usually his reaction would be like, oh, no, yeah, I'm sorry. You know, like, or he would have told me a day or two, you know, I would have noticed a day or two, you know, after he stopped taking it that he wasn't taking it. But I don't know, strangely enough, I just felt like he knew, like in his soul, that he was going, you know, and like somewhat that he was preparing for that. As weird as it is, like I know that he didn't want to leave, but I felt like that was just what had to happen, you know. And so he was like, "No, it's all good. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "Okay, whatever." But that was like he really was okay with what was going on at the time, you know, and he was really like reassuring me. And so later on that day, we kind of like were having lunch with two of his cousins, and he had snuck away to have a nap because it takes a lot out of you, you know, like out of a person when they have a seizure. And there's so many different types of seizures, and he had a grand mal seizure, which is the one where your whole body tenses up and you just like are shaking uncontrollably and like jerking, you know what I mean? Like your whole body is jerking and you can't control it. And so that takes all of his energy and he has to really recover, you know? And so he snuck away after lunch and we were all watching Daddy Daycare as a family, and it was the night of the Super Rugby finals, you know? So we were in Sydney, and Danny has a lot of cousins there, and so they were all supposed to come over to that one cousin's house that we were staying at to watch the game. And his cousin, Nafa, whenever we go to Sydney, she would fully give up her whole apartment for us. So she would just like go and stay with her mum, and her husband would go with her and her two kids, you know what I mean? And then she'd just be like, here you go, here's my house, you know? So she always looked after us like that. And so we were there and everyone was supposed to come over. So I went to go wake him up because it was 5 o'clock and everyone was supposed to be there. And I never, like, instantly, I knew, like, I understood that saying, like, when you walk into a room and you just know that something's wrong. You know what I mean? And so I walked in and I was like, something is not right. And, and so I found him pretty much gone. You know, he was pale, and we called the ambulance and they tried to resuscitate him, but there was just nothing that they could do.
I've heard this story a few times before because we're quite close with Teri and we have a lot of involvement with you. So what's that like now? Is it feel like a dream? What's your reality like? So you're now a widow and you've moved on now. Well, not moved on, I should say. It's time's moved on. So like I know at the time you were heavily pregnant with Zealand, your youngest, and so you had to birth the child on your own, and then you've had 4 little ones to bring up. And I remember back in those days it was quite Groundhog Day, and I remember you used to say, oh, I just want them to grow up so then it's not so tedious. And so now you're in a space, they're a little bit grown up but still young. So what's widow life like for you, and how's people around you, and how's it been those last 7 years?
Yeah, it's definitely been a roller coaster, you know what I mean, like of emotion and like mentally and everything. So I was 35 weeks pregnant when he passed away. And so with all my other 3 children, it had been just him and I in the birthing room, you know, and it was something that we both wanted, just us two there. And so when I went to go give birth to Zealand, it was my mother-in-law and my mum, you know, and it was so, like, I love the both of them to death, but it was the most uncomfortable experience, you know, like, and they did their best and they wanted to help me, but it was the worst birthing I ever had, you know, if I'm real, you know what I mean? Like, honestly, hated that whole experience, not because, you know, because of what my mother-in-law and my mum were doing, you know, but just because it wasn't the same, you know, like he wasn't there and that sort of thing. So that was really interesting. That was 2012, September, and then my eldest daughter, she started school the following year. So, you know, like from all my kids at home to starting school, my eldest starting school and getting her through that, like her first day of school and all of that, and thinking, you know, like you get married and everything, or you find the right person and you think that it's going to be a certain way, and it just, life doesn't always pan out that way, you know. So it has been like, the early days were just, the first year was definitely a haze. Like, felt like I was on autopilot, and I really don't remember much in that year at all. You know, like it really was just survival. You know, like trying to get through each day. Every time I had to get ready to go somewhere, it literally took me 3 hours, if not more, to get all of my kids ready and out the door. And so I had, you know, the 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, no, she just turned 4, 5-year-old, 4-year-old, a 1-year-old, and then a newborn. And the 1-year-old and the newborn, both in nappies. And so I just felt like every time I would get them ready, like something would go wrong, you know, like my girls would get their clothes dirty, or, you know, like, and like, of course that happens to every parent. Just being on my own, it felt like it took forever each time, you know, to get out of the house. And so that was, I honestly, felt like time was super slow. And I actually went, I think it was 3 weeks. Zealand was 3 weeks old, and I actually went into hospital for stress. So my whole body became paralyzed, and I could barely breathe. Like I had really bad sharp pains in my chest. And my mum had actually moved to I was living in Melbourne at the time, and she moved to Melbourne to help me out. But she had young kids at the time too. So my baby sister was six, and then I had like a 10-year-old sister and a 12-year-old sister. And so she moved over there to help me, but it never really helped me because she, you know, like it was hard for her to deal with her own children and then try and help me. Like she had great intentions, but we both like stressed each other out. And so she got really sick and I got really stressed out, you know, and I don't show stress. You know, I actually don't show a lot of stress. A lot of people say, well, you know, like you're so strong, but they have no idea I'm crumbling inside, you know, but I just like put on that brave face because at the end of the day, that's just how I grew up. You know, you just move on, you just move forward and get things done. And looking at my 4 kids, like I had no choice but to be strong, but to be that person to keep moving. And so, going into that, being hospitalized for stress, I actually went into hospital maybe 2 times, 3 times in my widowhood, but it was more when my kids were younger, you know, like with stress because I didn't know how to deal with it, and sleep deprivation. And, you know, one side that they don't really talk about, I guess, with any kind of loss or change in life or anything is really when I looked at myself in the mirror, I hated what I saw, you know, and so there were so many things that I had to do to change and pick myself up by myself, you know what I mean? Like pick myself up as well as continuing this other wheel of raising my children, you know, but also learning to look after myself better, you know. So that was a huge challenge for me. Just a
question, Terry, sorry to butt in.
No, it's fine.
Just hearing that, you know, like it just seems, you know, that first couple of years, it seemed like you can't really see like light at the end of the tunnel. And I can only imagine there would have been so many times where you felt like, you know, why me? Or felt like there's no hope. Like, what are some of the self-talk that you would say to yourself to try and get past and to keep going?
Well, I think fortunately for me, at the time we were doing network marketing. And so one side that really I think was part of the savior for me was doing personal growth.
Yeah.
You know, and so reading books and listening to audiobooks that really helped me understand why I do certain things and who I am as a person. I think so many Polynesians grow up because growing up in a Polynesian strict home, like my dad was super strict and we weren't allowed to do anything. I grew up before I started school not being able to speak anything but Samoan at home. So when I went to school, I really struggled with learning, you know what I mean? Because we would go to school and speak English, then come home and we weren't allowed to speak English, you know? So then it was like, how do you, you know, like be part of like this English community when, you know, you don't know how to speak it. You're just such a fob kid. But then like you grow up and you're in a Polynesian home and you're just told what to do. You're told what to eat, what to wear, you know, like who you are, how, you know, like you're seen and not heard. And so I think so many Polynesians grow up with an identity issue. You know, like they don't know who they are, what they want in life, how even to go about life as an adult where we get to choose what we want and how we deal with things. You know what I mean? Like, because we've been told all our lives, like, no, you're not allowed to do that. You do this because I said so. You know what I mean? And not knocking Polynesians, but that's just how we grew up, you know? So I grew up like not even knowing, like it's like the dumbest thing ever. Like I didn't know how to stand up for myself. Like I worked in a really good job, you know, like growing up, getting out of school and working and stuff, but I would be sitting there and I'd put up my hand and be like, oh, can I go to the bathroom? Because I didn't know how to have autonomy, you know what I mean? So that was like a real struggle for me as a person before I got, you know, like before I met Danny. And so that became a lot of issues in our marriage because I was insecure in myself and I would project that on him. And so with the personal growth, it really started to help me understand who I was, why I do certain things, why I think certain ways, you know. And so I think the very first thing I did when I really started, like I honestly started that journey, I can't remember what book it was or what audio it was, but it said to ask all the people that are close to you something like, who am I as a person, or what do you like, or what do you dislike about me? Something like that, to that effect. So I actually called my twin sister and I didn't get along for the first good 27, 28 years of our lives. Like we struggled being, you know, like the same person, dressing the same or sharing stuff, you know, like we both despised each other. So I called my mom, and I'm known as like the witch of my family because I'm very direct and I'm not afraid to say, you know, what I feel, you know what I mean? So like, or disagree with someone. So that's my persona, you know, everyone has a persona in their family, I guess. But then, and so like, so to hear what they really had to say about me, and it was like, no, you know, Teri, you're like this and you do this. And it was really like, it would really, that's attacking me, but I was ready to receive that and understand, okay, that's really who I am. And there's more people, you know, like it's not just one person saying it. So how do I not be that person? You know, and that kind of like started my journey, you know, the snowball effect of my personal development journey and like really my growth journey, because the woman that you see before you right now, is nowhere near the person I was 7 years ago. Like, you wouldn't even recognize me, like physically, mentally, emotionally, completely different person.
So saying that, Terry, like, yeah, you answered the question with like your diligence with your own personal development kind of saved you from those negative thoughts or mindset. So you would agree that where you are now, do you think you could have got here if Danny hadn't passed away? Like the person you are?
No.
No?
Like I would have, but it would have taken me years and years and years. You know, and I guess that is the what do you call it? That's the double-edged sword. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have him here, but if it wasn't for him passing away, I would never have made me this amazing woman that I am now. You know, like, I'm not. I don't want to boast and say that I am, because I don't. You know, like, but then compared to what I was before, completely different. You know, and there's no way. I think he would have helped me get there, but it would have been probably, you know, like, I don't know, another 20 years before I realized some of the lessons that I learned, you know? I feel like the biggest lesson for me has been with hindsight. And, you know, hindsight is one of those things. It's one of those things where, like, you learn the lesson, but you can't change a thing. You know, it's not like you can go back and go, okay, well, I learned it now, like, let's go back and start again. And I feel like there's been plenty of times where I've sat there and I'm like, okay, Danny, I've learned my lesson now, come back.
Yeah.
You know, like, it has really felt like that. But you know, as weird as it sounds, I am really grateful for the lessons that I've learned. And I feel like I've become a better parent for my kids too, in understanding certain things, and I just become a better person in society, you know, and like moving the way that I maneuver in my life.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, because you've had to hustle quite a lot, being by yourself, and I've you know, we've been able to watch this, and you've created things like Brownie Fix, and now you're trying to, you know, venture into other things like exercise clothes for bigger women. And I think watching you has been admirable, but I know also that it's a struggle from time to time, just being alone and being by yourself. And so I guess the question around that is, what have other people contributed to being a support or not? Like, what does that look like for you?
Well, the first thing I'd say about that, like, in terms of support and everything from day dot, when everything happened, is that you really get to know who those real people are in your life. You know, the people that actually are genuine and have real love for you. And to be honest, like, you know, like, Kim and I, we knew each other, like, before and everything. And it was just like, yeah, cool, hey, what's up? You know, like, we didn't really get to know each other too much until Danny had passed away. And and like, Kim really reached out and really took that opportunity to get to know myself and my children, you know, and I think that was huge for me. And I've never really said that. I've never really like said that to you, but that for me was one of the biggest things that like, it meant a lot to me. You know, like, Will being Danny's best friend is cool, but, you know, like, it's not like he can come and be that person, you know. So I look for, you know, like, you to step in and really bridge that gap, so that like, all the boys could be, you know, like, have a part in all of that, you know, like, be there for the kids in that sort of way too. Like, I know that they would have been anyway, but the way that you came about it really brought that together, you know, and it really, really did help me, and it really helped me to understand myself in a way where I stood with everyone, you know. And you really did show me like real, genuine, true love. You know what I mean? Like checking on us all the time. And we lived in Melbourne at the time. But it has been a struggle. Like I've pretty much done everything by myself, you know, for the last 7 years. I know, like I've met a lot of widows and widowers within the time, and majority of them, once their spouse has passed away, they either have their parents move in with them, or their parents, you know, or they move in with their parents, or their parents are just around the corner, you know. So they're constantly, you know, they have some sort of system where they can help you, you know what I mean? So I had my brother who lived with me at the time, and he was 21. And then I had my in-laws, and I had an auntie and an uncle. But you know, there's something completely different, you know, when it comes to siblings, where you can just be like, man, can you help me? You know what I mean? Or parents, where you're like, dude, I'm struggling here. But it's a lot harder when it's not your immediate family, you know, like to ask for help in that way, or to have that expectation. And so it has been really hard to find a medium between understanding that people can only help as much as they can, and, you know, like me as the person, as the widow, can't really expect too much from others, because at the end of the day, everyone has their own lives, you know. And at the beginning, like everyone is wanting to help and everything, because it's in the moment, you know, like it's still raw, it's still fresh. But after a while, you know, everyone moves on with their lives, and you are the only one that deals with it. You're the one that lives with it day to day, you know what I mean? So I had to, in a way, like forgive others, not forgive them, but really forgive them for myself, to be like, okay, you can't expect anything, you know, like you can't be expecting people to do this. And sometimes I feel like I did overuse people, because I really just felt like I was just over it, you know, like, can you just take my children, you know, like just give me a break. And sometimes, you know, like I would take a bit of advantage of that, because
But would you say babysitting is like the widow's dream gift?
yeah, yes,
Like for a
like
widow, is that like
yeah.
something like you would just like it if people would just come over and offer, like, let us have the kids, you go do something? Like, is that something you'd encourage other people that know
Yes.
widows, you know, like other people? I know everyone may be related to a widow or be friends with them.
Yeah.
Is there something you'd
Yeah.
encourage, like just go over, you know, tell them we'll do the kids for a couple hours, go and do something for yourself? Is that something other widows would appreciate?
100%. Like for anyone, and that's exactly what I was thinking, you know, what you were saying was, if you know anyone that's a widow or widower, like, and even if it's a widow or widower that doesn't have kids or anything, you know, that are older, you know, like really take that time to be like, hey, let's go have lunch, or hey, let me take your kids, go do something, you know, like, or if they're all at school, like, hey, let's go get a pedicure or something like that, you know, like just something for them to take their mind off reality. I think all have our different coping mechanisms, and one of them was really like my sister would say to me, so why don't you schedule this? Why don't you do this and this and this, like during the day, like when the kids are at daycare? Why do you wait till later? I'm like, to be honest, I'm too busy in the fetal position on my bed crying all day watching movies. You know what I mean? Like, and then by the time I come to, my kids are at home, and I'm like, oh crap, like for the majority of the time I forget that it's dinner time, and my kids are like, what's for dinner, mom? And I'm like, what's the time? What the heck? Because it just, like, everything is mushed in together, like time, days, you know what I mean? Like everything. There are days that I'm super organized, but most of the time I'm not. You know, I still am working on that.
There's one controversial question I'd like to ask you, Teri.
Okay, go ahead.
You know, now that you've been on this side, you know, we normally ask people this, like, looking back what's happened, would you rather be this way, or would you rather a child go?
That's something that I have, like I've got friends that have lost children. My sister has actually lost 2 children, and you know, like I would, if you asked me that question when I just lost Danny, I would say no, it's easier to lose a child because at least you can make more children, right? And you have your spouse to go through, you know, this struggle with, right? But what I've learned over the years is death isn't easy no matter how it comes. You know, and so it doesn't matter if it's your child or if it's your parent or if it's your spouse, it's all hard, you know, either way. And so it's got different elements to it, but it's all very similar in a way that we lost something we once had, or someone we once had, and we were so used to having them around and doing certain things with them all the time, and now that person's gone. And so, like, I think that was a selfish thing for me in the beginning, just to be like, oh man, it's easy, you know, like you can just make another child. But then understanding that there are so many couples that have lost a child that are now divorced. And so not only have they lost a child, they've lost their marriage because it's so hard to deal with. You know what I mean? So I could never say that one is harder than the other because they all have so many elements to them.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
And thanks for sharing that perspective.
Yeah. So just to like wrap up, we're really grateful for what you've shared, and I know that people that watch, you know, I've realized lately that people deal with grief and loss very differently, and that it looks just like you said, it's all loss, like, and it's all sad, and it's all just what they're trying to do day to day to get by. And so I appreciate you jumping on and sharing how you have hope and what your fight back is. Can people purchase your Brownie Fix?
So yeah, I do have a company called Brownie Fix Brisbane. I now live in Brisbane. I've been here for 4 years. You'll find me on Instagram and Facebook at Brownie Fix Brisbane. Yeah, basically I'm open to doing, you know, like it's from small boxes to big catering events and stuff like that. So yeah, just hit me up on there. I also have started a new venture, which is fat cavitation and body sculpting. And so we are going through just refining the last few things of it. But that's happening as well. So one of the great things that have come from all of this, apart from the growth, like the personal growth, is really helping me understand who I am and my limits and how I can push myself. To be honest, like if this did never happen to me, I would never be starting my own business. You know, I would have never started my own business. I would have never seen myself as someone who was more than just a mother at home. You know, like I never would have seen more for my children, you know, and really my goal at the end of the day was to show my children, no matter what your circumstance, you can be successful at anything. And does that mean that I don't have dark days? Like, no, I have dark weeks and dark months, you know what I mean? Like, but, you know, we just push forward anyway. And part of that is having great people surround you, the right people that push you forward and give you that type of advice that you need. Sometimes it's hard advice, you know, that type of advice that hurts you and like makes you realize what's going on. And sometimes it's, you know, just encouragement on moving forward and continuing. So either way, it's all helped me to become this person that you see before you today.
Yeah, Great. Thanks, Teri. Sorry, I'm going to just chuck one more thing in there. What, moving on and dating now, I guess that's kind of like, it's a thing because you're so young. You're in your 30s. So what's that? Are you looking to move forward, or how does that feel? That kind of thing.
Yeah, so when Danny passed away, I was 25. I'm now 32, about to turn 33. And funnily enough, Danny and I had talked about like that scenario, like what if you died early, you know, would you want me to get remarried and that sort of thing. And so he asked me like, oh, so would you want me to get married if you died young? And I said, no, I don't care. You'll be single for the rest of your life. I really don't care. You know what I mean? Like, but then like, so I asked him, you know, he was like, you know what? No, I want you to be happy. My kids need a good father figure. And so like we have really come, you know, like I had understood that from him, and he was like, I think that's really important. And so I think I went into widowhood really thinking like, okay, well, you know, like God knows that Danny wants me to have someone, so I'm going to have someone soon, like, you know, probably within 2 years, like at least, you know what I mean? Now I'm single, and like I have dated a little bit, but I just haven't found the person that really has matched where I'm at mentally and where I want to go, and also where to fit in with my dynamics with my children as well. You know, like, not that I'm picky, but we pretty much, like the guys that I've dated, we've mutually said, well, you know, this is cool, but it's not working. You know what I mean? So I'm still on the, you know, on the lookout.
Are they all right to slide into your DMs? What's your Instagram?
Slide into it.
Slide into Teri's DMs.
I'm barely on social media. I'm only on there to post my stuff. And then
if any of you guys are worthy and you guys are like, you know, making moves, hit me up. I'll filter you guys and then I'll slide you guys to
That's a good way to do it.
So I'll be doing the interviewing myself. But just before we go, I just want to let Teri know that we love you and we're so proud of the woman that you are, and her brownies. Like, whether I'm friends with her husband or not, they are the best brownies in this universe. So support her. But if you can't babysit her kids, make sure you buy a packet. Even if the packet doesn't make it to you, just buy a packet. Or
follow for the new business ventures, because she's a growing, evolving woman. And that's what I love about her. She's a woman after my own heart, strong, and keep fighting, girlfriend, keep fighting. We love you, and thanks for joining us.
Love you guys. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
See you, Teri.